Hey everybody, welcome back to December Daily for 2023. I am working on story number 5 today and inviting you to come along with me. My focus today is on the concept of loving. So what are 5 things I am loving right now? And as I was thinking about different ways I could approach this particular page, which is one that if you have this to fit in the 6x8 album, you could simply fold it up, you could cut it off, lots of different things that you could do to make that fit the size that you are working in. But as I was thinking about the prompt and kind of looking for a different twist on it, maybe that wasn't what am I loving right now, I instead decided to ask our kids, what are they into? What are they loving right now? And I told them they could just do single words, whatever it could, whatever they wanted. And it's actually kind of fun because I sent them a text message, and this actually would be perfect in and of itself to just punch holes and put it in the album. But because I want to work on this paper, and what I'm thinking I'm going to do is I want to stamp. So I'm going to stamp out their responses on here in that space provided. But I thought it was really fun just to have them text back and see what they said. I had a separate one for Isaac. Isaac said cars, driving, chess, gaming with friends. Audrey said volleyball, fashion, and Roblox, which is funny because that is like a comeback. We haven't seen Roblox around here for a while. Anna said same Z's. And then her list down here is volleyball, friends, and journaling, which I thought was awesome. Elliot said woods, fires, and conversations, which is very, very him. I loved that. And then Simon said beginning my steps in filmmaking, behind the scenes shit, and then imagination, which I thought these were great. I loved having these responses. So my plan here is that I am going to stamp out their words and kind of fill up the space with the stamps. I'm also going to be putting something on this side, and it might be what Aaron's into and what I'm into. I'm thinking could be that, could be a photo. I'm not sure yet. I'm also kind of thinking I could put our Christmas card photo in here. I do have our Christmas cards, so I might put those in here, that in here too, or I might wait and save that for later. I kind of want to mail them out before I put them. I want to mail them out before I put them in here, so it might end up that I would still punch holes and put it back in here on this page. We'll see. It's not anything that I have to decide right now. But what I do need to decide right now is what alpha stamps do I want to use for this. So I pulled out a couple. Some of you know that this year we've done a new stamp series where we've been offering alpha stamps, 6x8 alpha stamps each month. That's been really fun because I'm a huge alpha stamp lover. Probably alphas and numbers are my most favorite kind of stamps in terms of, wanting to use them over and over again. So I pulled out 4 different ones. I think 2 of them are from Alphas Are Awesome. So we have this one right here. This one would be great if I had pretty short words that I was doing, but I think that I have maybe more than that. So I also grabbed this one. This would be fun. You could almost fit 2 rows in there. It may be a little bit tight. Again, this is going to be a lot of stamping on there, right? It's kind of the idea of the big page of stamping, but doing it within the confines of this particular prompt. So this is still a contender. I also pulled this one out, which is a nice, really thin sans serif. This one is available. I think this one is still available, and so is this one. The other one that I am considering is an alpha stamp set. This one is not available anymore, but it would also work great for this, probably because of the size of this one. I could definitely fit all of them in there, so I might end up with that one. But I thought this one would also be an interesting choice. It's still just a little bit too big. So I think I'm going to go with the alpha. I think we offered this for One Little Word a few years ago. It's one that I really, really like. And since we don't have this one available anymore, I know that Illustrated Faith actually has one that is similar. That's an upper and lowercase. So if you're looking for one, this one's a little bit smaller. I think that Jill did this one for Illustrated Faith, but it's another one that I have. Obviously, I like typewriter fonts, and typewriter stamps are great. So that is one that you could check out since we don't have this one available anymore. So my plan is that I would like to put their initials on there. So maybe I'll use this one for their initials. And then I will add in what they are into. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And I think that I can get pretty close with these colors here. So I've got the red, I have a pink. This is a little darker pink. I have I think I would say that one is probably this similar to this one, which I think is Olympia. Then it's like there's a dark green, or could be a navy. I have a navy, and then I also have the Willamette, which is it's not as dark green as that one, but I think it'll work. So let's go ahead and throw that back in here. So the first thing I'm going to do again is initials. And I think we'll start with Anna at the top. Let's do her. We'll go youngest to oldest this time. It's always a little bit risky doing this much stamping, but I think it's super fun. I actually love it. So we're just going to dive right in. Again, I'm going to start off with their initials, and then we'll go into what they are into. And I haven't decided yet. I think I might do it in the same color, so each person would have it as the same color there, and that's what I think I'm going to do. All right, let's talk a little bit about this stamping. I am somebody, when I'm stamping something like this, I like to do one letter at a time. You can absolutely put both of them on there, but I like more control over the spacing. And when I say you could put both of them on there, I mean that you could put both of the stamps, the letter stamps, onto the lid there to be able to stamp both letters at the same time. 100% something that you can do. Again, I'm just particular about the spacing, so I like to have them a little bit closer together than you can always do with the stamps by themselves. After I got the initials stamped, I grabbed the chipboard stars there, and I'm using the little gold ones to separate the space between the initials and the start of stamping the things that they are into. Let's see, here we go. So I'm speeding this way up. Sometimes when I do these, I edit them each individually. And this time, because I'm doing so many individual stamps, I just have the speed sped up. But again, I am using the same color for each kid. I am going to the end of the space there, and then I'm just going down to the next line. If the friend doesn't fit, if the word doesn't fit, I'm just moving to the next line. I also loved that this particular stamp set had the commas. I also end up using the quotation mark on the bottom for Simon's one as well. The first couple kids here, the words that they actually used on the text that they sent me fit right into the space. When I get down to Isaac and Simon, I had to adjust their words just a little bit to make it fit because there were too many letters to fit in there, but I think it's still definitely in alignment with the things that they were saying. I loved doing this. I love any opportunity to bring in their voices. This is a super simple, easy invitation to, send out a text message, especially if you have older kids, or even to just ask your little kids or your family members or whoever it is that you might want to feature, or just yourself. What are you loving right now? What are the things that you are into? What are the things that are bringing you joy? I loved getting this back from them because I learned a few things. I laughed about the Roblox thing. I totally had no idea that the girls were back into playing that again. I had no idea that Anna would say journaling. That is awesome. And that obviously, as you guys can imagine, makes me so happy. Sometimes it's just getting responses from them too. Like Elliot in particular, he loves being outside. He loves being with friends, and he's very filled up by that season of his life. So now we're on Isaac down there. He had done on his, he said cars/driving, and then he also said gaming with friends. And I don't think that I could fit gaming with friends on there. I tried to think of a few different ways to do that, but I just went ahead and put gaming. Simon had more words than just filmmaking. He said something like beginning his experience with filmmaking. Then he said something about behind the scenes blank. And so I did that as I made an acronym for him. And then imagination was his other word. So that fit in there. So I needed to, adjust those ones a little bit just to make them fit on the page itself. Then once I finished up the stamping portion, which I love how that turned out, I was looking for what kind of a card could I do on the other side. I know I mentioned our Christmas card, or I mentioned adding in a photo, or I could, use the space to write what Aaron and I were loving. But what I decided to do instead was to make a title card using one of the vellum cards from the vellum, or the journal card transparency pack. So I decided to I'm using Stays on this instead of our inks because it's a slick surface. And so black Stays on here. I'm going back to that original stamp set that I used for the initials, and I am stamping out what the kids are loving. This, I think, ended up being a fun way to connect the two pages together, right? Since I had those spaces on the other page. And I also really like this sentiment paired with the craft card that's above it about, choosing your own holidays and really leaning into what's the most important thing for you and your family, not for everybody else. And that's always a sentiment that I think is good for me to remember around here too. So stamping this out, what I end up doing with this is I'm going to slip it in the pocket. I'm actually going to, surprise, surprise, turn that pocket into a shaker pocket. And part of the reason why I do that, and you'll see in a minute, is I just felt like I wanted a little bit more color on this side of the spread compared to the color. The other side is so colorful, and I just wanted to have a little bit more of a connection there. So after I was done stamping, I laid that on there. I definitely liked how that looked from a visual standpoint. Before I got to the shaker part, I started thinking about numbers for along the outside edge, and I couldn't find my those red transparent numbers for a minute. Finally, I found them. Then I felt like that was too small. I have the red vellum number from my stash that was an add-on that we offered earlier this year. I had a few different ones that I was kind of just going through and looking at what would they look like. I end up going with the red vellum because I love that one. And I remember when we offered that as an add-on, I was like 100% I want to have this in December daily. I want to save this for that. I end up stapling that on there with my tiny attacher, as you will see in a little bit. But before I get to that part of the process, I cleaned up some of the other things that I had on my desk. Then let's see, at some point here, I'm going to go, I'm going to punch the holes so that I can finally put this page into my album, the loving page. It's been sitting in there for a long time because I wasn't sure which side I was actually going to end up punching the holes on. So I had waited for that. Love being able to see through to the stamping from story number 4 to story number 5. Here's where I'm taking out that vellum piece. I'm actually slipping it into the pocket, and then I'm going to use some more of the same sequins that I used on story number 4. I'm just going to put a few of those in there, and then I'm going to run this through the sewing machine to keep it in place. And when I ran it through the sewing machine, I actually ran it with the story 4, looking at the other side of it where there's a line on the card that I used for story 4, and I just put it on right in that space. I like how that looks. I'm here for the crafty mess and the stitching and the texture and all of that. I lifted up the back of the transparency just a little bit to be able to staple the vellum number 5 on there. I'll be using a tiny attacher for that. I considered a brad. That's what I just had in my hand there. But in the end, I go back to my tiny attacher, which is a staple. It's literally a staple. It is a staple in my memory keeping adventures. There you go. I love how this one turned out. Super fun. Love bringing in the other voices. Love adding in the colors of the inks for the stamping. Just all around really happy with how this page turned out. All right, my friends, I will hopefully see you back here again tomorrow as we embark on story number 6.